Get $3 off every order at PlayAsia by using the code CENSORED.
Now, some of you may be familiar with Galgun's sequel titled Double Peace, which launched in English markets last year for PS4, Vita and Steam. However, it was in fact this Japanese-only 360 title from back in 2011 where things all began. The game kicks off with the protagonist being hit by Cupid's love arrows, which in turn makes all of the girls at his school fall madly in love with him. But this comes with a catch: if he doesn't find his true love before the end of the day, he will be doomed to spend the rest of his life in loneliness. The game is divided by story sections and then the rail shooter gameplay, which sees you incapacitating the crazy girls charging at you so that you can proceed. These aren't ordinary shots though, and are instead pheromone filled love arrows, which causes them to drop to their knees in ecstasy. There's also the option to single out any of the girls and zoom in on specific body parts, complete with extra sounds and animations. So as you can see, the game is quite erotic in nature already, but did you know that at one point in time it was even more so? You see, prior to the game's release, this Japanese-only title caused a lot of controversy with platform owners Microsoft. Now, Microsoft was not the game's publisher and was not involved in any way with the title except for it being released for one of their systems. However, Microsoft still took major issues with this Japanese-only title, and it was due to being able to see the character's underwear. 79 days before the game was scheduled to be released in Japan, Microsoft suddenly called a meeting with the devs about the game's content, which led to the title's official website declaring a state of emergency and freezing the countdown clock. The publisher explained, and I quote, "Negotiations have started for the great moral cause, panties. Fans were left uncertain on what would happen and what the fate would be for this great moral cause. The game's countdown resumed, but no announcement was made on whether the underwear had been left intact. Then when the game did finally release, players found that the panties were still in the game. Don't celebrate too quickly though, as before long, that would change." Dubbed the fix for the camera control bug update, it seems that Microsoft allowed the devs to release the game as is, as long as they were to then quickly patch the underwear out. And so a little over a month later, the game was updated so that it was no longer possible to move the camera underneath the girls' skirts. The website Andriasang, which sadly shut down a number of years ago, has a great comparison of the before and after effects of the patch. To the left is what the game was like before the patch, and to the right is after. As you can see, it is now impossible to see any underwear or to simply move the camera lower than waist length. There was also one other change that was made via this update, and this affected the visuals during an event where a character is searching for books in the library. Now, at the bottom of the screen is what's supposed to be a whiteboard, and as shown, originally this whiteboard was completely transparent. However, following the patch, the whiteboard was coloured in like so. It can be important and interesting to look back at the past sometimes and reflect, and this story highlights the fact that sometimes censorship can even come from the companies behind the consoles that games are released for. This isn't the first time that Microsoft has done something like this, and it also most likely won't be the last. You may recall how recently the developers of the game Quantum Break revealed how Microsoft stepped in and asked them to remove both nudity and drug references prior to the game being released. This is something Censor Gaming already has a video for, and there will be a link in the description if you wish to go check it out. There are many other examples though, and of which Censor Gaming already has a video for, being Conker's Bad Fur Day and its Xbox remake Live and Reloaded. Now, the remake was originally supposed to be called Live and Uncut, but this was changed due to Microsoft again stepping in and asking the devs to tone down certain content. The worst affected being the title's heavy use of bad language, which unlike the N64 original was beeped out in the remake. Censor Gaming even contacted the devs to make sure that it was indeed Microsoft who were responsible, which they confirmed it was. Conker's video is over 13 minutes long, so this is again something you may wish to check out, and there'll be a link in the description. As for Galgun though, our tale does not end there, and the final part will end things on a much more positive note. You see, whilst Microsoft had the issues that they did, it turns out that Sony on the other hand didn't. Thus, a little over a year later, Galgun was then ported to the PlayStation 3 with as much underwear as the devs wanted to show, which it turns out is rather a lot. Alongside this, there were a whole range of new features, including improved graphics, new game modes, and a grand total of 423 unique panty designs. This release of the game was also not brought over to the West, but the title's popularity with importers helped pave the way for the sequel to eventually be localized in 2016. Also, the game's history really shows just how different attitudes can be between Microsoft and Sony. Sony does also have previous experiences of telling devs to change things during development though. Hideo Kojima's Policenauts Policenauts is a rather interesting case, as this was again a Japanese only game, yet this time Sony, a Japanese company, stepped in and forced Hideo to make various changes. Affected this time was the title's breast touching mechanic. Again, there'll be a link with more information about this in the description. As always though, Censor Gaming doesn't like to just keep you up to date on the modern stuff, but also sometimes likes to take a step back and take a look at the past. And hopefully with this video you have now learnt a few new things. Until next time, thank you for watching.